each of these women in their individual work bring to this issue of women's policies, the practices of companies, the contributions of women across all sectors of society, and how, in fact, optimizing those does improve the bottom line of businesses, as we've already heard this morning. But there's also many opportunities for us to make life better.
So I drive sustainability and social innovation for HP. And that means that we go into our labs and into our businesses and we take a look at what innovations we have from a technology point of view that we can apply to solve the big social and environmental issues in the world. And we said that by concentrating on the social side, on education and health, we can make a tremendous difference, and also a tremendous difference for girls. So what we do is not only work with institutions like the University of the People that provide free tuition, and we give scholarships and mentorships for these young women. In 1800, we had 1 billion people on the planet. Now we have 7, going on 9. A third of these people are under 15. Half of them are under 25, and most of them are in emerging markets. The middle class is rising very fast. You need to understand all of that in order to be in business, in order to sort of reinvent yourself and your company in order to be successful going forward. And I think that is something that people need to understand, how to use technology to reinvent their job.
And it's interesting, I think, for Turner, obviously working on the Turner Classic Movies brand, it's a unique position because we're looking at some of the strongest women ever depicted in film, which is kind of a head scratcher because this is before women were really represented behind the camera. They weren't necessarily telling the stories or directing the stories. But I think there was a perception in the business at the time that women wanted to see themselves on screen, if only to see an elevated version of what they could be. And I think, sort of as a mirror for where we are today, we absolutely need to see images that young girls, young women can aspire to, or at least acknowledge that there is some power in a voice out there coming from a woman. And you know, we were just talking about this earlier. It doesn't necessarily mean that that woman has to run a country. It could just be someone successful in driving their own agency in their day-to-day life. That's okay. And that probably in and of itself would be aspirational for a lot of women. So I think more than anything, understanding that whether you're a content creator or a marketer, you have every day little decisions that you can make around building that story and creating images that certainly will lead us to a better place ultimately.
The reason why Gina started the Institute was actually accidental. It was when she started having her children, which she had in her late 40s. You don't need a research institute to understand how difficult it is for women in Hollywood, particularly if you're over 40. But it was from her observations of watching programming with her daughter, who was 2 at the time, and she was shocked to see that there was so much gender imbalance in what her youngest daughter was watching, regardless of whether it was television programming or film. Preschool clearly does the best job in the entertainment industry in terms of gender balance. And when she started talking to friends, she'd say, hey, did you know there was only, one female character in that entire movie? Her friends would say, no, I didn't notice. And she thought, well, maybe I need to ask producers or writers or directors. So if she'd go on meetings to talk about upcoming projects, she'd said, hey, have you noticed there are so few female characters in such and such? And they'd say, no, we have it covered. No, not us. And they would name the one female character in whatever the film was or TV show that they were producing. And so a few things came to mind. One, none of us are noticing. In terms of the women's movement, we've only gotten to that 17%, which means there's one female executive, one female on the board, a few female CEOs. And because that's all any of us, I believe, in this room have seen growing up, it looks normal. So therefore, we just don't notice. We've actually had many executives say to us, every time we get a script, we break it down to see if a character could be changed to African American or Asian or American Indian. We have never said, could that character be changed to female? So that's what we do, and that's our approach. So it's a research-based approach. What we've found is that, getting back to the 17% statistic, is that 17% of crowd scenes, whether it's in a TV show or film, are women. And Gina always tells this joke, well, I guess women don't like to gather.
I mean, now with mobile phones and with the internet, women in the most isolated places in the world can actually become not only connected to other women, but connected in a way that they can share stories and information that simply just would not get to us or to them any other way. And Hummingbird is one such citizen journalist. She belongs to a group called World Pulse. And if you don't know the World Pulse community, you must go home tonight and look at it online. And so Hummingbird comes from a place in the world that is extremely challenged and turbulent, and I'm going to ask her to begin there with her story and her family's story in the country of Syria.
I grew up in a small treasured village in Syria, in the mountains, and all of my life I just worked just to not to be helpless in society. The brutal regime in Syria, when it came in the 70s, it reinforced negative traditional habits like honor crimes against women. There were no laws to protect women's rights. So my grandmother was in an enforced marriage and she was not protected. My mother too. And then I fell into the same experience. But one day, I just decided to break this vicious cycle because my great-grandmother was also. And I couldn't forget my old dream of freedom, of being not helpless and not able. I packed my things, I opened the door and just left.
And you have been able to help them and other women in similar situations around the world because technology has given you a new way to do that. Can you talk specifically about how you use the mobile phone, how you use the internet to both empower yourself, but more importantly, to connect the information to places where it needs to go and to build a community of women?
Now for me, social media and internet technology helped me to raise my voice and to send a message across the world, to talk about what is going on, to talk about the women in my country. I would not be able to be here without social media and without internet. I wrote articles to World Pulse. I was in a program for training grassroots women to be the voices of their communities.
But what I think is really fundamental and what really needs to change in this world is we cannot point to governments, we can no longer point to just nonprofits or to companies to solve these problems. I really think we all have to get up out of our seats and realize that we have fundamental skills that can change people's lives.
I think the ways into the conversation sometimes requires people to gather in a community outside of those sort of silos, I guess. And for us, and you referenced this earlier, we have an amazing internal business resource group called Turner Women Today.
When times get bad financially, I mean, it's just a sort of unwritten rule of business. First things to go, environmental programs, women's programs, diversity programs, all that stuff that isn't about the bottom line. How do you keep them understanding, the people that are doing the budgets, understanding the impact on the bottom line?
At the end of the day, I'm sure the work that we do brings a lot more to the bottom line than we spend.
We watched a part of the world that you grew up in change overnight. Now we're watching it evolve slowly, and surely media and technology and women are going to have a significant role there. Remind us why it matters so much, what each and every one of us do.
Because it will bring change. It will bring change to many communities that suffer from dictatorship like mine.
And I just want to say how much better I feel about the future going forward when I know there are people like Gabby Zettermeyer at companies like HP who are putting those programs into place and proving that they work for the world and for the company. Paula, what you are doing at Turner, continue that leadership, the voice of women in all of our companies, but particularly our media companies, is so critical because there we can make the difference that makes a difference everywhere. To Gina and to Madeline, much gratitude for the work. It's informing our choices as media consumers, and there's probably nothing more important than we do every day than to decide what gadget we pick up, what program we watch, what newspaper we read, what blog we visit. Thank you all very much.